emphasis concentrated on output. Oh my goodness, we are just now getting into this. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I want to move on to the other things. Okay, so here's an explanation of the cycle. Constitutive waves present both. Hold on. Get rid of this music here. It's driving me nuts. Okay. I like this background music. It helps me relax and focus and think that other stuff. I don't know what I was thinking with that. So constitutive waves and these cycles with their turning points, long cycles, they present both causes and effects of common events that have recurred in capitalistic economies throughout history. Although Constitutive himself made little differentiation between cause and effect, understanding the cause and effect of constitutive waves is a useful discussion. Sorry, I'm trying to get my mic situated. Straighten out. Okay. Let's see. Understanding the cause and effect of constitutive waves is a useful discussion and academic tool. The causes documented by constitutive waves primarily include inequity, opportunity, and social freedoms. Often much more discussion is made of the notable effects of these causes as well. Often much more discussion is made of the notable effects of these causes as well. Effects are both good and bad and include, to name just a few, technological advances, birth rates, populism, and revolution. And revolution's contributing causes, which can include racism, religious and political intolerance, failed freedoms and opportunity, incarceration rates, terrorism, etc. When inequality is low and opportunity is easily available, peaceful moral decisions are preferred, and Aristotle's good life is possible. That's what they mean when they say the good life, is it? Americans call the good life the American dream. That's interesting. Have any of you ever thought about that? The good life? The American dream is based on the good life philosophy of Aristotle. Now, we've read in previous videos that Aristotle was a Gnostic. If he believed in God, it was this self-enlightening Gnostic, let's just be one with the universe, bruh, kind of interpretation of God. Whereas, I wonder, I need to look again at Aristotle to see if he spent any time with the Hindus, with their meditations and stuff, because, Aristotle and his things, the good life. So opportunity created the simple inspiration and genius of the Mayflower Compact, for example, post-World War II and the post-California Gold Rush. These were good lives, or moments in history. So post-World War II, the GDP was up, inflation was down, everything was free and easy in the 50s and 60s and stuff. And then towards the end of that, you get the hippies, which they kind of are like the younger generation today that doesn't really want to work, and they just want to sit around outside in the yard and smoke weed and just talk about peace, bruh. Peace and equality for all, and goodwill to men for all the days, and all that wonderful world, and just positivity, prosperity kind of stuff. But then you get to where, you so much of that, after a couple decades of that, you see a recession. It's kind of like it goes back to that old saying, hard times make strong men make good times make weak men, and then weak men make hard times, and then you got to have the hard times to get the strong men to come back out of their man caves or whatever. It's just so ridiculous how these humans work. So let's see. 1850s exemplified times of great opportunity and low inequity and both resulted in unprecedented technological and industrial advances. On the other hand, the 1893's global economic panics were not met with sufficient wealth distributing government policies internationally, and a dozen major revolutions resulted, which some argue were significant causes of World War I. Few would argue against the assertion that World War I or World War II began in response to the economic strictures of World War I's Treaty of Versailles. I've heard about this. Peace treaty signed in June 1919, most important treaty of World War I. It ended the state of war between Germany and most of the Allied powers. It was signed by the Palace of Versailles, and exactly 5 years after the assassination of Archduke whoever. And the failure to create government policy that supported economic opportunity during the Great Depression. So few would argue against the assertion that World War II began in response to the economic strictures of World War I's Treaty of Versailles and the failure to create government policy that supported economic opportunity during the Great Depression. Well, they did create a government policy that supported economic opportunity. It was World War II. That was their policy. So, the Great Depression, then you had World War II, and then you had the 50s with baby boomers. So, and some people think that all these wars and stuff are artificially engineered. Yeah, that's a controversial opinion, but if you think about it, you go into a recession, the money's down, inflation's high, interest rates are high, and, the government is going to come in and be like, alright, we gotta make some money, so let's go to war and boost its GDP. War makes a lot of money. There's a lot of profit in war. That's why, if you look closely at the aftermaths of most wars, life's pretty good right after war. The decade after war is usually the best times for an economy. So, technological innovation theory. According to the innovation theory, these waves arise from the bunching of basic innovations that launch technological revolutions that in turn create leading industrial or commercial sectors. A lot of new technology comes around after wars too. You had radar. I can't remember which war radar was. It might have been World War II. And you had radio, radar, flight, some other things, a bunch of space and all this. It's all war. It revolves around war and all that crap. Create leading industrial or commercial sectors. Contradictive ideas were taken up by Joseph Schumpeter in the 1930s. The theory hypothesized the existence of very long-run macroeconomic and price cycles, originally estimated to last 50 to 54 years. In recent decades, there has been considerable progress in historical economics and the history of technology and numerous investigations of the relationship between technological innovation and economic cycles. Some of the works involving long-cycle research and technology include Minsk, 1979, Tilecote, 1991, the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, Freeman and Loka, Andrei Korolev, and all these people are economists and whatnot, analysts. Perez, 2002, places the phases on a logistic or S-curve with the following labels: the beginning of a technological era as eruption, the ascent as frenzy, the rapid build-out as synergy, and the completion as maturity. Demographic theory. Because people have fairly typical spending patterns through their life cycles, such as spending on schooling, marriage, first car purchase, first home purchase, upgrade home purchase, maximum earnings period, maximum retirement savings, and retirement, the demographic anomalies such as baby booms and busts exert a rather predictable influence on the economy over a long time period. The Eastern hypothesis deals with post-war baby boom. Harry Dent has written extensively on the demographics and economic cycles. Tilecote, 1991, devoted a chapter to demographics and the long cycle. Land speculation. Georgists such as Mason Gaffney, Fred Valdberry, and Fred Harrison argue that land speculation is the driving force behind the boom and bust cycle. Land is a finite resource which is necessary for all production, and they claim that because exclusive usage rights are traded around, this creates speculative bubbles which can be exacerbated are exacerbated by overzealous borrowing and lending. As early as 1997, a number of Georgists predicted that the next crash would come in 2008. Huh, interesting. They predicted this crash in 1997. The Georgists. What are Georgists? Georgism, also called in modern times geoism, and known historically as the single tax movement, is an economic ideology holding that although people should own the value they produce themselves, the economic rent derived from land, including from... Hold on, let me look at this a little closer. Historically known as the single tax movement, geoism is an economic ideology holding that although people should own the value they produce themselves, the economic rent... What is economic rent? Any payment to the owner of a factory of production in excess of the cost needed to bring that factor into production. Oh, factor, not factory. So is this like renting an office space? Or a warehouse or something to make your stuff? I don't know. In classical economics, economic rent is any payment made or benefit received for non-produced inputs, such as location or land. I don't know about that. Let me see. Natural resources, the commons, and urban locations should belong equally to all members of society. Developed from the writings of American economist and social reformer Henry George, the Georgist paradigm seeks solutions to social and ecological problems based on principles of land rights and public finance, which attempt to integrate economic efficiency with social justice. Alright. Georgism is concerned with the distribution of economic rent caused by land ownership, natural monopolies, pollution rights, and control of the commons, including title of ownership for natural resources and other contrived privileges, example, intellectual property. Any natural resource which is inherently limited in supply can generate economic rent, but the classical and most significant example of land monopoly involves the extraction of common ground rent from valuable urban locations. Okay, so I guess that makes sense. Is it like renting property that you would farm, or like a lumber company might rent somebody's property, cut all the trees, and I don't know, maybe. That sounds like it makes sense. I don't know. That's a little bit out of scope for this. But anyway, these people, Georgists, predicted that the next crash would come in 2008, which is interesting. Debt deflation is a theory of economic cycles which holds that the recessions and depressions are due to the overall level of debt shrinking, deflating. Hence, the credit cycle is the cause of the economic cycle. Yes, credit and debt. Credit and debt, the entire economy. Fake money, credit, and debt. The theory was developed by Irving Fisher following the Wall Street crash of 1929 and ensuing Great Depression. Debt deflation was largely ignored in favor of the ideas of John Maynard Keynes in Keynesian economics, but it enjoyed a resurgence of interest since the 1980s in both mainstream economics and the heterodox school of post-Keynesian economics. So who is this guy? Keynesian economics are the various macroeconomic theories and models of how aggregate demand strongly influences economic output and inflation. In the Keynesian view, aggregate demand does not necessarily equal the productive capacity of the economy. I would have to know what aggregate demand means. Post-Keynesian economics, school of economic thought which origins in the general theory of John Maynard Keynes, with subsequent development influenced to a large degree by Michael Kalecki, Joanne Robinson, Nicholas Caldor, blah blah blah, Paul Davidson, blah 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 blah. Subsequently been developed by such post-Keynesian economists. Right, what is it talking about? That's debt deflation. Yeah, whatever. Modern modifications of the Kondrativ theory. Remember, we're talking about the Kondrativ wave. That's what this whole wiki is supposed to be about. Inequity appears to be the most obvious driver of Kondrativ waves, and yet some researchers have presented a technological and credit cycle explanation as well. There are several modern timing versions of the cycle, although most are based on either of two causes, one technology and the other on the credit cycle. Credit cycle. Credit cycle is the expansion and contraction of access to credit over time. Some economists, including Barry Eichengreen and Hyman Minsky, and other post-Keynesian economists and some members of the Austrian school, regard credit cycle as a fundamental process of driving a business, blah, blah, blah. Additionally, there are several versions of the technological cycles, and they are best interpreted using diffusion curves of leading industries. For example, railways only started in the 1830s with steady growth for the next 45 years. It was after Bessemer steel was introduced that railroads had their highest growth rates. However, this period is usually labeled the age of steel, measured by value added. The leading industry in the U.S. from 1880 to 1920 was machinery, followed by iron and steel. Any influence of technology during the cycle that began in the Industrial Revolution pertains mainly to England. The U.S. was a commodity producer and was more influenced by agricultural commodity prices. There was a commodity price cycle based on increasing consumption causing tight supplies and rising prices. That allowed new land to the west to be purchased and after 4 or 5 years be cleared and be in production, driving down prices and causing a depression as in 1819 and 1839. By the 1850s, the U.S. was becoming industrialized. The technology cycles can be labeled as follows. The Industrial Revolution, 1771. The Age of Steam and Railways, 1829. The Age of Steel and Heavy Engineering, 1875. The Age of Oil, Electricity, the Automobile, and Mass Production, 1908. And the Age of Information and Telecommunications, 1971. I don't necessarily agree with this. I would say that the Age of Information and Telecommunications began way earlier than 1971. I mean, yeah, the 70s is kind of the time when you see the mainstream adoption of home computing, but the fact of the matter is that, telecommunications and information, computers and all that, we just did this video, either the last one or the one before it, where, they had concepts of artificial intelligence all the way back as far as the 1940s, and so this is not, and the telephone, yeah, I mean, that goes back to the early 1900s as well, right? So, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Communicating and storing information, transforming information, computing information. Get out. Let's see, 1780, water power, 1848, steam power. Water power goes out that goes back pretty far. Egypt was doing that on the Nile River thousands of years ago and whatever. Steam power, okay. Electric power, okay. But you also had the telegraph and the Morse code machine and the telephone even. And then combustion, the Model T was starting up in the early 1900s, I think it was either right before or right during the mid-19 teens, like between 1910 and 1920. Certainly before 1940 though. And all this other stuff. I don't know where they're getting their information from, but it's based on Hilbert in 2020. Yeah, you need to do a little bit more history study, bro. You off a little bit. Just communicating and storing information, you need to go back to like early 1900s with that. Computers and computer science and this blah blah blah. That goes back to the 50s as well. Don't get it. Let's move on. I'm getting aggravated with these. Specified modification of the theory contra TF cycles was developed by Daniel Smehula, identified 6 long waves within modern society and the capitalist economy, each of which was initiated by a specific technological revolution. The wave, number 1, is a wave of financial agricultural revolution between 1600 and 1780. So 1600 would have been towards the end, you could say, of the Renaissance and coming into the Enlightenment period. So you had the height of Rome. You had the fall of Greece and the height of Rome. Then you had the Dark Ages, and then you had the Renaissance, and then the Enlightenment era in moving into the Industrial Revolution, 1780 and 1880. And between 1880 and 1940 is the Technical Revolution. 1940 to 1985 is the Scientific Technical Revolution. 1985 to 2015 is the Information and Telecommunications Revolution. I guess you could consider that with the mainstream adoption of the internet, if that's what they're referring to. But telecommunications itself goes all the way back. What am I doing? What happened? Oh my god, what is going on? Yeah, anyway, I was saying telecommunications, if you consider the telephone, that goes back, early 1900s. A hypothetical wave of the post-informational technological revolution, 2015 to 2035, question mark, renewable energy transition. An energy transition is a significant structural change in an energy system regarding supply and consumption. Currently, a transition to sustainable energy is underway to limit climate change. It is also called renewable energy transition. The current transition is driven by recognition that global blah 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 something. Well, this Dr. Stephen Greer guy seems to have it all figured out if everybody would just listen to him. He's been in communication with the aliens. He knows the technology and he knows how to get to it and access it, but he just can't convince everybody that so ridiculous. This is a hypothetical wave of the post-informational technological revolution. So supposedly this started happening in 2015, and it's hypothetical, and it's going to end in 2035. So, unlike Kondratiev and Schumpeter, Smehula believed that each new cycle is shorter than its predecessor. His main stress is to put on technological progress and use technologies as decisive factors of any long-time economic development. Each of these waves has its innovation phase, which is described as a technological revolution, and an application phase in which the number of revolutionary innovations falls in attention focuses on exploiting and extending existing innovations. As soon as an innovation or a series of innovations becomes available, it becomes more efficient to invest in its adoption. Okay, so as soon as an innovation or a series of innovations becomes available, it becomes more efficient to invest in its adoption, extension, and use than in creating new innovations. That makes sense. I understand that. That's why they want to stay on oil and not adopt the flying atom smashing cars that are apparently use no gas and turn small amounts of atmosphere into light speed energy, and we can go to the Andromeda Galaxy and circumnavigate the universe and all that crap. It's total ridiculous. I'll keep my Chevrolet. I like my V8. It never lets me down. Each wave of technological innovations can be characterized by the area in which the most revolutionary changes took place. Quote unquote leading sectors. Every wave of innovations lasts approximately until the profits from the new innovation or sector fall to the level of other, older, more traditional sectors. It is a situation when the new technology, which originally increases a capacity to utilize new sources from nature, reached its limits and is not possible to overcome this limit without an application of another new technology. For the end of an application phase of any wave, there are typical an economic crisis and economic stagnation. The financial crisis of 2007-2008 is a result of the coming end of the wave of the information telecommunications technological revolution. That doesn't make any sense because artificial intelligence didn't really become a big deal until later on. I mean, you would have heard of it, but it didn't start becoming a big deal, I guess, until around the cryptocurrency time, which was in 2008, about the same time. So why are you considering that wave of information and telecommunications? Why is that the end? 2007, 2008. I don't understand their marks of how they open and close their dates. The waves, I don't understand where the starting point and the ending point, how they correlate in the waves. Just considering ChatGPT and all this other TikTok and whatnot, that was after 2008. Twitter was after 2008. So why is that considered the end of the information and telecommunications technological revolution when most social media apps that are prevalent today didn't exist until after 2008? You had Facebook, but that's ancient stuff nowadays. It's like MySpace, and MySpace really doesn't even exist anymore. Some authors have started to predict what the sixth wave might be, such as James Bradfield Moody and Bianca Nobrity, who forecast that it will be driven by resource efficiency and clean technology. Okay, so they're predicting what the sixth wave is. That's the hypothetical wave up here, where it's talking about the post-information technological revolution. So they're trying to predict it. It will be driven by resource efficiency and clean technology. Resource efficiency is the maximizing of the supply of money, materials, staff, and other assets that can be drawn on by a person or organization in order to function effectively with minimum wasted natural resource expenses. It means using the Earth's limited resources in a sustainable manner. Hold up. This is starting to creep into that Agenda 2030 stuff that the World Economic Forum wants to look at. They're talking about resource efficiency, the maximum supply of money, materials, staff, and other assets can be drawn on by a person or organization. Well, if everything's running off of AI, let's see, set by a person or organization in order to function effectively with minimum wasted natural resource expenses. It means using the Earth's limited resources in a sustainable manner while minimizing environmental impact. Yeah, on a side note, the artificial intelligence, the whole goal of that is to have humans do less and less things, to make humans less and less needed overall, especially in the workforce. But my thought on that is, where are humans going to go if they don't have to go to work? I mean, you think it's just going to be a utopia situation where everybody gets free money and all the stuff that they do from day to day is just not going to be, you're not going to have to pay for any of that? No, if artificial intelligence is running the world and taking your job, you're not going to get paid to sit at the house and watch Netflix all day. But you're still going to be consuming resources, and they're trying to minimize that. So what does that logically tell you in your brain? It should really make you think. The 2014 report by the Carbon Trust suggested that resource challenges are intensifying rapidly. People are breathing too much oxygen and too much carbon and wasting too many things. For example, there could be a 40% gap between available water supplies and water needs by 2030. And some critical materials could be in short supply as soon as 2016. These challenges could lead to disruptions to supply, growing regulatory requirements, volatile fluctuations of prices, and may ultimately threaten the viability of existing business models. So, let's look at the Carbon Trust. This is getting a little bit off topic from what I was originally, but I'm glad, I like where this is going. This is what I'm looking for, is what's going on in the modern world right now, and how does it relate to what happened before. And it seems like these waves are just a rise and fall, and now we got artificial intelligence. So the Carbon Trust was developed and launched in the UK over 1999-2001 as part of the development of the Climate Change Levy. So climate change isn't a new phenomenon. It's pretty old at this point. It's a tax on business energy use that still operates today. The Carbon Trust was originally funded around $50 million of UK tax revenue generated from the levy to help businesses reduce energy costs and therefore offset the additional cost of paying the CCL, Carbon Change Levy. Oh, look at this. Look at this seal. There's a horse, unicorn. What does this mean? A lion? This is another thing that fascinates me, is these seals here and what they symbolize. I'm sure it's very interesting, the symbology behind all these, what do they call them? The banners that each family has, the royal family, anyway, I don't remember. Let's see, carbon footprinting, The Carbon Trust provides voluntary carbon certification services and carbon labeling schemes that verifies organization and product carbon footprint data and provides marks of quality to organizations and blah, 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 blah. What's going on today with it? Carbon Trust launched the Carbon Trust Supply Chain Center to look at carbon footprints across the supply chain. It's the world's first independent certification for organizations that are measuring, managing, and reducing greenhouse gases, CO2 emissions for their supply chains. Let's see, currently standard 2050 carbon. The Department for Environmental, Food, and Rural Affairs is a department of His Majesty's Government of the United Kingdom and responsible for environmental protection, food production, and standards, agriculture, fisheries, and rural communities in the entire United Kingdom. Goodness, they got their hands on everything. Carbon footprint label. Alright, that's about it on the Contrative wave. Interesting stuff. Definitely has a lot to offer for this modern age that we're in, and I definitely enjoyed the read on what was that we looked at, resource efficiency and the Carbon Trust. Yeah, sustainability is a social goal to help people coexist on Earth over a long time. Scientific definitions of this term are disputed and have varied with literature, context, and time. Experts often describe sustainability as having three dimensions or pillars: environmental, economic, and social, and many publications emphasize an environmental dimensions. Alright, I gotta stop. My brain is turning to mush. I still got several things I want to go over, but that's gonna have to be another time. But we got through the Contrative wave. It's a lot of reading. I want to eventually go into the religious views of Marxism, and I want to read a little bit more in the Communist Manifesto to really put a bow on this Marxism thing. I want to learn as much as I can about it, and that's going to be in the forthcoming videos when we go over some of this other stuff here. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.